Tea with Miss P, starting out week 3. This is the start of the 3rd week of all the social distancing, and it makes me a little sad sometimes to think about how long we've been doing all the social distancing, because I really do miss my people. I miss my students. I miss my students' parents. I miss seeing my family. I miss seeing my friends. It can make me really sad. But I know in my heart and in my head that we are doing the right thing by keeping ourselves safe and keeping other people safe from all this sickness out there. So I'm doing my best and keeping myself busy. This week, I'm going to be spending a lot of time figuring out how to become a teacher online with distance learning, with e-learning ideas. So I'm going to be working, and I know a lot of other teachers are also going to be working to kind of get things in place so that we can start doing more school online with you guys. So that'll be super exciting. That'll keep me very busy, as well as reading to you every single day. So we finished Matilda last week, and I love reading Matilda to you guys. Matilda has been one of my favorite books for such a long time, and it's such a treat that I was able to share that book with you guys. And just reading for fun. Reading for fun is something that I've enjoyed doing since we have been social distancing, so it's not something that I always make time for during the school year when we're super busy with learning and grades and all those things and all these novels that we have to read. But now that we've kind of had a break, it's been so fun to do just fun reading. The book that I will read to you guys now is another book called by Ronald Dahl. It's actually his first published children's novel called James and the Giant's Peach. This is a wonderful book. I actually saw the junior highs, Churchill and Lombard, they pair up together to do a play every year. And the play that they did this year was actually James and the Giant Peach. My good friend was in it, and it was super awesome to see it on stage. And now I'm super excited to read the book by Ronald Dahl, one of my favorite authors. This book is not as big as Matilda, so it should only take us about a week to read, and I'm super excited to share this with you guys. Here is James Henry Trotter when he was about 4 years old. Look at his cute little face. Up until this time, he had a happy life, living peacefully with his mother and his father in a beautiful house beside the sea. There were plenty of other children for him to play with, and there was a sandy beach for him to run about on, and an ocean to paddle in. It was a perfect life for a small boy. Then one day, James's mother and father went to London to do some shopping, and something terrible happened. Both of them suddenly got eaten up, in full daylight, mind you, and on a crowded street, by an enormous, angry rhinoceros that had escaped from the London Zoo. Now this, as you very well can imagine, was rather a nasty experience for such two gentle parents. But in the long run, it was far nastier for James than it was for them. Their troubles were over in a jiffy. They were dead and gone in about 35 seconds flat. Poor James, on the other hand, was still very much alive, and all at once he found himself alone and frightened in the vast, unfriendly world. The lovely house was by the seaside had been sold immediately, and the little boy, carrying nothing but a small suitcase containing a pair of pajamas and a toothbrush, was sent away to live with his 2 aunts. Their names were Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker. I am sorry to say that they're both really horrible people. They were selfish and lazy and cruel, and right from the beginning they started beating poor James for no reason at all. They would never call him by his real name. They always referred to him as "you disgusting little beast," or "you filthy nuisance," or "you miserable creature." And they certainly never gave him any toys to play with or any picture books to look at. His room was as bare as a prison cell. They lived, Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and now James as well, in the queer ramshackle house on the top of the high hill south of England. The hill was so high that almost from anywhere in the garden James could look down and see for miles and miles across the marvelous landscape of woods and fields, and on a very clear day, if he looked in the right direction, he could see a tiny gray dot far away from the horizon, which was the house that he used to live in with his beloved mother and father. And just beyond that, he could see the ocean itself, a long, thin streak of blackish blue like a line of ink, just beneath the rim of the sky. There are his aunts, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, and this is the house that they live in now, on top of this large hill. But James was never allowed to go down at the top of that hill. Neither Aunt Sponge nor Aunt Spiker could ever be bothered to take him out herself, not even for a small walk or picnic, and he certainly wasn't permitted to go alone. That nasty little beast will only get himself into mischief if he goes out of the garden, Aunt Spiker said, and the terrible punishments were promised for him, such as being locked up in the cellar with the rats for a week, if he had even so much as dared climb over the fence. The garden, which covered the whole top of the hill, was large and desolate, and the only tree in the entire place, apart from the clump of old laurel bushes at the far end, was an ancient peach tree that never gave any peaches. There was no swing, no seesaw, no sand pit, and no other children were ever invited to come up the hill to play with poor James. There wasn't so much as a dog or cat around to keep him company. As time went on, he became sadder and sadder and more lonely, and he used to spend hours every day standing at the bottom of the garden, gazing wistfully but lovingly at the forbidden world of the woods and fields and ocean that spread out below him like a magic carpet. Here is James Henry Trotter after he had been living with his aunts for 3 whole years, which is really where the story begins. For now, there came a morning when something rather peculiar happened to him, and this thing, which, as I say, was only rather peculiar, soon caused a second thing to happen, which was very peculiar, and then a very peculiar thing in its own turn caused a really fantastically peculiar thing to occur. It all started on the blazing hot day in the middle of the summer. Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and James were all out in the garden. James had been put to work as usual. This time he was chopping wood for the kitchen stove. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were sitting comfortably in the deck chairs nearby, sipping on tall glasses of fizzy lemonade and watching him to see that he didn't stop for one moment. Aunt Sponge was enormously fat and very short. She had small peaky eyes, a sunken mouth, and one of those white flabby faces that looked exactly as though it had been boiled. She was like a great, soggy, overboiled cabbage. Aunt Spiker, on the other hand, was a lean, tall, and bony, and she wore steel-rimmed spectacles that fixed on the end of her nose with a clip. She had a screeching voice and long, wet, narrow lips, and whenever she got angry or excited, little flecks would spit out, shooting out from her mouth as she talked. And there they sat, the 2 ghastly hags, sipping their drinks, and every now and again screaming at James to chop faster and faster. They also talked about themselves, each one saying how beautiful she thought she was. Aunt Sponge had a long-handled mirror in her lap, and she kept picking it up and gazing at her own hideous face. "I look and smell," Aunt Sponge declared, "as lovely as a rose. Just feast your eyes upon my face, observe my shapely nose, behold my silky locks, and if I take off both my socks, you'll see my dainty toes. And don't forget," Aunt Spiker cried, "how much your tummy shows." Aunt Sponge went red, and Aunt Spiker said, "My sweet, you cannot win. Behold my gorgeous curvy shape, my teeth and my charming grin. How beauteous is me, how I adore my radiant look. Please ignore my pimple on my chin." "My dear old trout," Aunt Sponge cried, "you're only bones and skin." "Such loveliness as I possess can only truly shine in Hollywood," Aunt Sponge declared. "Oh, wouldn't that be fine? I'd capture all nations' hearts. They'd give me the leading part. The stars would all resign." "I think they'd make you a lovely Frankenstein," said Aunt Spiker. Poor James was still slaving away at the chopping block. The heat was terrible. He was sweating all over, his arms aching. The chopper was a large blunt thing far too heavy for any small boy to use. And as he worked, James began to think about all the other children in the world and what they might be doing at this moment. They would be riding tricycles in their gardens, some would be walking in cool woods picking up bunches of flowers, and all the little friends whom he used to know would be down by the seaside playing in the wet sand and splashing around in the water. Great tears began oozing out of James's eyes and rolling down his cheeks. He stopped working and leaned against the chopping block, overwhelmed by his own unhappiness. "What's the matter with you?" Aunt Spiker screeched, glaring at him at the top of her steel spectacles. James began to cry. "Stop that immediately and get on with your work, you little nasty beast," Aunt Sponge ordered. "Oh, Aunt Sponge," James cried out, "and Aunt Spiker, can we all please, just for once, to go down to the seaside on the bus? It isn't very far. I feel so awful hot and so lonely." "Why, you lazy good-for-nothing brute," Aunt Spiker shouted. "Beat him," cried Aunt Sponge. "I certainly will," Aunt Spiker snapped. She glared at James, and James looked back at her with a large, frightful eyes. "I shall beat you later in the day when I don't feel so hot," she said. "Now get out of my disguise, you disgusting little worm, and give me some peace." James turned and ran. He ran off as fast as he could to the far end of the garden and hid himself behind a clump of dirty old laurel bushes that was mentioned earlier on. Then he covered his face with his hands and began to cry and cry. Chapter 3. It was at this point that the first thing of all, rather peculiar, that led on to something much more peculiar things happened to him. For suddenly, just behind him, James heard rustling of leaves. He turned around and saw an old man in a crazy dark green suit emerging from the bushes. He was a very small old man, and he had a huge bald head and face that was covered all over with bristly black whiskers. He stopped when he was only about 3 yards away and stood there, leaning on his stick and staring at James. Nope. When he spoke, his voice was very slow and creaky. Come closer to me, little boy, he said, beckoning James with his finger. Come right closer to me, and I'll show you something wonderful. James was too frightened to move. The old man hobbled a step or two nearer. Then he put his hand in his pocket of his jacket and took out a small white paper bag. You see this? He whispered, waving the bag gently to and fro in front of James's face. You know what this is, my dear? You know what's inside this little bag? He came nearer still, leaning forward and pushing his face so close to James that James could feel breath slowly blowing on his cheeks. The breath smelled musty and stale and slightly mildewed, and still like the air in an old cellar. Take a look, my dear, he said, opening the bag and tilting it towards James. Inside it, James could see a mass of tiny green things that looked like little stones or crystals, each one about the size of a grain of rice. They were extraordinarily beautiful, and their strange brightness about them, a sort of luminous quality that made them glow and sparkle in a most wonderful way. Listen to them, the old man whispered. Listen to them move. James stared at the bag, and sure enough, there was a faint rustling sound coming from inside it. Then he noticed that all the little thousands of green things were obviously very slowly stirring about and moving over each other as though they were alive. There's more power and magic in those things than there in the rest of the world put together, the old man said sadly. But what are they? James murmured, finding his voice at last. Where do they come from? Aha, whispered the old man. You'd never guess that. He was crouching a little now, pushing his face still closer and closer to James, until the tip of his long nose was actually touching the skin of James's forehead. Then suddenly he jumped back and began waving his stick madly in the air. Crocodile tongues, he cried. 1,000 long, slimy crocodile tongues boiled up into the skull of a dead witch for 20 days and nights, with the eyeballs of lizard. Add the fingers of a young monkey and a gizzard of a pig and a beak of a green parrot and the juice of a porcupine and 3 spoonfuls of sugar. Stew it for another week and then let the moon do the rest. All at once he pushed the white paper bag into James's hands. Here, take it. It's yours. Chapter 4. James Henry Trotter stood there, clutching the bag, staring at the old man. Now then, said the old man, all you've got to do is this. Take a large jug of water, pour all the little green things into it. Then, very slowly, one by one, add 10 hairs from your own head that set them off. That gets them going. In a couple of minutes, the water will begin to froth and bubble furiously. And as soon as that happens, you must quickly drink it down, the whole jugful, in one gulp. Then, my dear, you will feel a churning and boiling in your stomach. Steam will start to come out of your mouth, and immediately after that, marvelous things will start to happen for you. Fabulous, unbelievable things, and you will never be miserable again in your life, because you are miserable, aren't you? You needn't tell me. I know all about it. Now, off you go and do exactly as I say. Don't whisper a word of this to those 2 horrible aunts of yours. Not a word. And don't let those little green things get away from you either, because if they do escape, they will be working their magic upon somebody else instead of you. And that isn't what you want at all, is it, my dear? Whoever they meet first, be it a bug, insect, animal, or tree, that will be who gets the full power of their magic. Now, hold on to that bag tight and don't tear the paper. Off you go. Hurry up. Don't wait. Now's the time. Hurry. With that, the old man turned away and disappeared into the bushes. Chapter 5. The next moment, James was running back towards the house as fast as he could. He would do all that in the kitchen, he told himself, if he could only get there without Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker seeing him. He was terribly excited. He flew through the long grass and stinging needles, not caring if he got stung or if he got it on his bare knees. And in the distance he could see Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker sitting in their chairs with their backs towards him. He swerved away from them and got to go to the other side of the house. But then suddenly, just as he was passing underneath the old peach tree that stood in the middle of the garden, his foot slipped and he fell flat on his face in the grass. The paper bag burst as it hit the ground, and thousands of tiny green things were scattered in all directions. James immediately picked himself up in his hands and knees and started searching for the precious treasures. But what is this? They were all sinking into the soil. He could actually see them wiggling and twisting, and they burrowed downward towards the hard earth. And at once he reached to pick them off. It was too late. They had disappeared right under his fingers. They went after something else. And the same thing happened. He began to scrabble around frantically in an effort to catch what those were left. But they were too quick for him. Each time the tips of his fingers were just about to touch them, they vanished into the earth. And soon, in the space of only a few seconds, every single one of them had gone. James felt like crying. He would never get them back now. They were lost, lost, lost forever. But where had they gone to? And why in the world had they been so eager to go into the earth like that? What were they, after all? There was nothing down there except old roots of a peach tree, and the whole lot of earthworms and centipedes and insects living in the soil. But what was it? The old man said. Whoever they meet first, be it a bug, insect, animal, or tree, that will be the one who gets the full power of the magic. Good heavens, James thought. What is going to happen in case they do meet an earthworm, or centipede, or spider? And what if they do lure the roots of the peach tree? Get up at once, you lazy little beast, a voice suddenly shouting in James's ears. James glanced up and saw Aunt Spiker standing over him, grim and tall and bony, glaring at him through her steel-rimmed spectacles. Get back over there immediately and finish chopping those logs, she ordered. Aunt Spudge, fat and plumpy as a jellyfish, came waddling up behind her sister to see what was going on. Why don't we just lower the boy down into the well of the bucket and leave him there for the night, she suggested. That ought to teach him not to be lazing around the whole day long. That is a very good wheeze, my dear Sponge, but let us make him finish chopping the wood first. Be off with you at once, you hideous brat, and do some work. Slowly, sadly, poor James got off the ground and went back to the woodpile. Oh, if only he hadn't slipped and fallen and dropped the precious bag. Only hope of a happier life was now gone completely. Today and tomorrow and the next day, and all the other days as well, could be nothing but punishment and pain and unhappiness and despair. He picked up the chopper, and he was just about to start chopping away when he heard a shout behind him that made him stop and turn. Chapter 6. Sponge, Sponge, come here at once and look at this. At what? It's a peach, Aunt Spiker was shouting. A what? A peach, right up here. There's on the highest branch. Can't you see it? I think you must be mistaken, my dear Spiker. That miserable tree has never had any peaches on it. There's one there now, Peach. Look, Peach Sponge, look for yourself. You're teasing me, Spiker. You're making my mouth water on purpose as if there's nothing to put into it. Why, that tree has never had a blossom on it, let alone a peach. Right up there, the highest branch, you say. I can't see a thing. Very funny. Ha, ha. Good gracious me. Well, I've been blown. There really is a peach up there. A nice big one, Aunt Spiker said. A beauty, Aunt Sponge cried. At this point, James slowly put down his chopper and turned to look across at the two women, who were standing there underneath the peach tree. Something is about to happen, he told himself. Something peculiar is about to happen at any moment. He hadn't the faintest idea what that might be, but he could feel in his bones that something was going to happen soon. He could feel it in the air around him, and in the sudden stillness that had fallen upon the garden. James tiptoed a little closer to the tree. The ants were not talking now. They were standing there, staring at the peach. There was not a sound anywhere, not even the breath of the wind, and overhead a sun blazed down upon them out of the deep blue sky. It looks ripe to me, Aunt Spiker said, breaking the silence. Then why don't we eat it? Aunt Sponge suggested, licking her thick lips. We have about half each. Hey, you, James, come over here at once and climb this tree. James came running over. I want you to pick that peach on the highest branch, Aunt Sponge said. Can you see it? Yes, Aunt Sponge, I can see it. And don't you dare eat any of it for yourself. Aunt Spiker and I are going to have it between us right here and there. Half each. Get on with you. Go up there. James crossed over to the tree trunk. Stop, Aunt Spiker said quickly. Hold everything, she said, staring up at the branch with her mouth wide open and her eyes bulging as though she had seen a ghost. Look, she said. Look, Aunt Sponge, look. What's the matter with you? Aunt Sponge demanded. It's growing, Aunt Spiker said. It's getting bigger and bigger. What is? The peach, of course. You're joking. Well, look for yourself. My dear Spiker, that is perfectly ridiculous. That is impossible. That's now just wait a minute. No, that can't be right. No, yes, great Scott, the thing really is growing. It's nearly twice as big, Aunt Spiker shouted. It can't be true. It is true. It must be a miracle. Watch it. I am watching. Great heavens alive, Aunt Spiker yelled. I can actually see the thing bulging and swelling before my very eyes. And that's all we have time for today. So I will see you guys tomorrow. We're going to learn more about what this peach that keeps growing is going to do, what James and Spiker and Aunt Sponge are going to do about it. Have a great day. I miss you guys and I love you.